Alright, for this next project, we're going to have a student database application. The scenario is that you're a database administrator for a university and you're being asked to create an application to manage student enrollments and balance. Okay, so this application will have a couple things. So when we start off, you're going to be prompted to ask how many new students you want to enter into the database. And so if you enter 3, then we're going to have 3 new students. If you're going to have 5, you're going to have 5 new students. So we need to actually handle a scenario where, what if there's an unknown number of new objects we're going to be creating. So instead of naming each one, we're going to have to handle that uniquely. Or not uniquely, but generically. And once we create a new user, you will actually then be prompted to enter their name and then their year. So they can either be a freshman, a sophomore, junior, or a senior. Once we get that, then we're going to generate a unique 5-digit ID. The first number will correspond to their grade level. And then continuing on with that student, they can then enroll in a series of courses. Every time they enroll in a course, they're going to be billed another $600. And then they can pay their bill, they can view their balance, they can see the courses they're enrolled in. And then once all of that action is complete, then we will exit that student and then we'll go on to the next student to enter their information. So we'll stay kind of inside this loop until they're done doing their actions. And so that's our that's kind of the outline of our student database application. And let's get started in Eclipse and just kind of write the general start. So we're done with our email app. So I'm going to create a new package here. We'll create a new package for each project, and I'm going to call the student database app. Okay, and like last time, we're just going to have a class with a main, and this will be our student database app will be the name of our main class, and then each student is going to come from a class called student. Of course, that's not going to take the main. So there's our 2 classes that we'll be working with. We'll write our outlines for each one here in the next video, and hope you can follow along. And given this given this outline, this overview, try and write your own outline before we start the next video. Alright, let's work on the outline for our application. Here's our main function, our main class here, and what are we going to do here is we need to, let's take a look at our instructions. We need to ask how many new students will be added to the database, and then we'll do our respective actions. So here we need to ask how many new users we want to add, and then at that point, of course, we will create n number of new students. Okay, we'll leave any other kind of implementation here later on because a lot of it's going to be inside of a loop, likely. So let's go to our student class, and this is going to be our outline. We'll need a constructor, and our constructor is going to do what? We're going to prompt the name and the year. So constructor prompts user to enter student's name and year, and so we'll do that. And then what else are we going to have in this program here? We're going to generate a ID. So we're going to generate an ID. What else are we going to do? We're going to enroll in courses. So enroll in courses. And then let's see what else. We're going to view balance and pay tuition. That will be something we do. View balance and then pay tuition. And then we're going to have a status of the student where we will print the information. So that's going to be a print. So we'll say show status. Okay, so here's some methods. We might have more. We may need more, but this seems like this would be enough for right now. Let's take a look at the properties that we need, the variables. And again, using encapsulation, we want these to be private. So we want private first name, private string first name. We'll want private string last name. So these are going to be the properties that we're going to be prompted to enter. And we'll say private string, we'll say grade year. I don't quite know what we call it in college. It's not grades, it's not, I guess it's your year. Then we're going to have a private int, I'll say student ID. And what I want to do is have a private string courses. So I'm going to make this a string instead of an array, just to kind of make it a little more maintainable for right now. So there's our courses, which we'll have, and then our balance, we'll say private string balance. I'll say tuition balance. How about that? Tuition balance. And I guess with that, we know how much each course is going to cost, right? Each course will cost $600. So that's something that would be helpful for us. We'll say private int cost of course is equal to 600. And by the way, our tuition balance should be an integer. There we go. Okay, so I think this is enough for right now, and we have some basic outline here. Of course, there's probably going to be more that we'll add later on, but this will be enough to get us going, and so we'll begin implementing this in the next video. Okay, let's go to our student class, and before we figure out how to ask how many users we want and iterate through that many times, let's just do it for one, and then we can enhance this for n number of users. Okay, so we're going to have our constructor that we're going to prompt to get the name and the year. So again, a constructor will be public student, and we're not going to take anything in the argument because we're going to ask for it inside this method here and inside the constructor. And let's see, so we're going to have our, how do we do a input? We bring in the scanner library. We'll call it in equals new scanner, and we'll take it from the console there. Alright, bring in the scanner into this project. There we go. Okay, so let's then prompt the user, to say enter student's first name, and then we'll set that equal to this dot first name is equal to the in the scanner for the next item. So we're going to do in dot next, and we'll do next line. That takes a string. So when they hit enter, it'll submit. Now I'm going to copy this again, and now I'm going to grab the last name. And so instead of first name, we'll do this dot last name. And then finally, we want to ask for the graduation year. So enter student class level or grade level, whatever you want to call it. So this will be a let's see. So what we can do here is say, let's see here. Let's give them the option here, and we'll say enter one for freshman, 2 for sophomore, let's see, slash n, 3 for a junior, slash n, and then 4 for a senior, slash n. Okay, let me fix these lines here. 2 for sophomore. Okay, I think that looks good there. So that's this. Okay, and so we're going to ask for a number. So instead of the next line, what we want is we want the next int for the integer, and so that's going to be a integer. So we want grade year to be an int. So our grade year will be next, or this dot grade year. Okay, so let's just see if this works here now, and we'll print this all out. So we'll say this out. We have first name, and then last name, and then grade year. All right, let's just see if this works before we do anything further. So I'll go back to our student database, and we're going to create a new student here. So we will just say stu1 equals new student, and I won't need to do anything else, but we can now run this. Enter student's first name. How about William? Enter a last name. How about Johnson? And enter class level. He will be a junior. And there we go. Okay, so we have our basic constructor set up, and we'll do some more things in the next video. Generate an ID for each student. Now, we want each student to have their own ID. Now, when I say something like that, you should immediately think of something that we either need a random number, but we actually want to do a static. We want to work with the static figure here. So why do I work with static? And again, this is something I would mention more in my other course. Static means if we have a static variable here, for example, we have let's make a private int, private static int, we'll just say ID, and I'm going to set it to 1001. So every time we create a new student, they're going to have this value. In other words, this value will stay with the class. In fact, the cost of courses also should be static. What I mean by static and how does this kind of play into object-oriented programming? So what I mean is that if something is static, that means that the value or the property is not specific to an object, but is something that is true for all objects. It belongs to the class, not the instance of the object. In other words, the cost of the course is not something that's only true for the instance of the object. It's just true for a student. And an ID, which we will work with here in just a moment, is something that we want to stay with the class. So every time, actually let me change this to 1000. Every time we create a new student, then what we want to do is increment ID by 1. So when we create one student, then their ID will be 1001. If we create another student, a second student, then that value of 1001 is going to be retained in this class. So then we add 1 to it. Now their ID will be 1002, and so on. So that's the usage of static in this instance. Okay, but our instructions were to create a 5-digit ID with the first number being their grade level. Okay, so we need to kind of enhance this. Now we're going to generate an ID here, so we want a private. Again, we don't want this accessible to the outside. This will be internally handled. Private, and we can return a string, or we could say, let's just return string, and we will call this set ID. Okay. Now when we set the ID, what's our ID going to be? It's going to be the static ID, and then the first, or the grade number. So let's see, we have this class ID, and then we have the unique student ID that belongs to the instance. So this is what we want to set. We want to set our student ID. So in fact, I should probably be more explicit and say set student ID. Student ID, once again, is grade level plus the static ID, or the ID, I should say. Okay, now I'm going to make this string instead of an integer, and because once we get out of this ID, we can actually just convert it into a string, and so we can say we want the grade level, grade year, so we say grade year, and we can do this grade year and then concatenate ID and say return. Let's see, so this should actually, because we have this string here, it will then treat this as a string and not a number, so it won't actually add the two numbers, but we have this little kind of makeshift string argument, which will make the entire statement switch to a string. Okay, so here we want to let's see here, so we want to set our student ID actually, instead of returning, we'll say student ID equals, so we'll say this dot student ID equals this here, and let's see, we might need to cast this as a string. Let's see what the error message says here. Change type of student to yes, I thought I had to change that to a string. Yeah, so this should be a string. Okay, so we're going to make this void. So if it's set ID, then yeah, we can leave this as void. Now let's put this ID increment inside the set student ID to kind of just leave it outside of this constructor. So now we're going to create this constructor. When we've created that, we've got their name, last name, and grade. Now we're going to call the set student ID, and when we call that function, we're going to increment ID by 1, and then we're going to have their ID be the grade level plus that ID that was set. And let's see here again. Let me have this be before we print the information, so that I can print the info here, and also say set student ID so we can make sure we're working here. So this will just be kind of here temporarily. We don't want to set the ID, we want to get the student ID. There we go. Okay, let's see if this is working here. So I'm going to run this, and student first name, Jim William, and their sophomore. So okay, so Jim William 2, that's their sophomore year, 21001. Okay, so I think that is it, right? So we have 2 and then 1001. If you were to create another one, then it would be 21002 because that ID would attach to it. Okay, so we have our student ID that is being followed with the class again. That this is one usage of the static. And let's see if there's anything else we have to do here. We set the ID, and that's pretty much all we want to do in this video. Okay, so we'll come back in the next video. We'll implement a couple more things and keep enhancing this as we go. Alright, let's implement the course enrollment. And so let's go to our student and scroll down to, we have our outline here, enroll in courses. Okay, so let's do this. So we'll do public void enroll, and I'm not going to take any parameters here. And here's what I want to do. I want to get inside of a loop, and then user hits 0 when they're done enrolling, and then they can basically keep on continue enrolling. Okay, so we can say sysout. We'll say enter course to enroll, 0 to quit. Okay, now again, like I said, I want to put this inside of a loop. So let's do this. Let's first just do it without the loop. So we'll say system, not system, we do scanner in equals new scanner system dot in. Okay, let's see. So actually what we'll want to do is then take this to queue for quit, because what we're going to do is say in dot next line, in dot next line, and so we want this to be a string, so we'll say string course equals next line. Okay, so we're going to take their course, and all we want to say is if course is equal to Q, then we are going to say, well actually what we'll do is just say if it's not equal to Q. If it's not equal to Q, then we're going to take that as a course. We'll say course is equal to course plus, let's see what we're going to do, /n, and then concatenate. Okay, I'm a little messed up here. So we want courses. Courses is everything. So courses is going to equal the courses. Then we'll do a line break, and then we will do the course that we just selected. So that would be added into our list of courses. And now every time we add a course, then we're going to do what? We are going to increase our tuition balance by the cost of the course. So we'll say tuition balance equals tuition balance plus cost of course. Now if we're going to add something to tuition balance, we need to initialize this to 0. Okay. Okay, so this looks good, and let's see here. Let's just make sure. So after we do this, we'll say sysout enrolled in, and we'll concatenate courses, and then we also say sysout tuition balance, and we'll print tuition balance. Good. Alright, now that we can run this, and of course we need to call the method here. So we're going to call stu1.enroll, and so that's going to prompt us to, okay, so let's see here. So Tim Short, grade level is for a senior. Okay, enter course to enroll. Let's first do Q for quit. So there we got nothing. Okay. And which doesn't make sense, right? Because if we're going to enroll, then obviously we're not going to quit. So we're obviously going to enroll in something. So do it one more time. Enroll in history 101. There we go. Okay. Enrolled in null. Okay. So how can we fix that? We should initialize. I think we should initialize courses to null. And what we will do is say that, yeah, I think that's fine for now. Okay, let's now push this inside of a loop. So it's going to be inside of a loop. What do we want to do? We want to squeeze all of this out, and then we will leave this outside the loop just for our debugging purposes. Of course, we'll delete it here in just a moment. Okay, so our loop is going to be, we're going to do, and actually what we can do is just do this entire thing. And I guess there's a couple of things here, right? We could do, right, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So we can say if the course is equal to anything but Q, then we do what we do. Else, then we're going to break. So that's one way of doing it. Then we can just basically do while 1 is not equal to 0, which is forever. And that might be a way to do it. The other way to do it is kind of doing the redundancy thing here, and that is let's see here. So we could say while no, because that's defined inside the block. This is probably the best way to do it. We're just going to loop through this, and as long as the course is not equal to Q, we're going to continue looping, and if it is equal to Q, then we're going to break out of the loop. Okay, so let's run this. So Tim Short. Alright, so there's my ID, there's my grade level, course number, so we'll say history 101. Okay, enrolled, so let's do another one. We'll do math 101 and English 101 and Q to quit. Okay, so that did not quit, so we got to see what happened there. Let's see, did this line actually get executed? That's the question here. So what I want to see is, are we actually executing this line? Let's see here. Alright, so if I'm going to type in history 101 and I do Q, so it's not going inside of this. So my guess is that, let's see. My guess is that this is not evaluating to not false. So we need to, if it does not equal, so we want to say if it dot equals, this is much better with strings, and then we're going to say not, and then close quote. There we go. So the not equals method is sometimes a little bit more of a hard, deeper look into the equals. Okay, so history 101, Q for quit. There we go. Okay. Couple things. So we want this. I noticed we don't want this to be on the next line, so we want this just like that. And let's run it again. Make sure it is executing for multiple courses. So we'll say Tim Short, my sophomore year, history 101. There we go. It looks good in the same line. Math 101, English 101, and Q for quits. There we go. 3 courses, and 3 times 600 is 1800. Okay, so we have our enrollment, and this is good because we're not passing anything inside of here. We are saying this student is going to enroll. Once we call that method, then we're having the ask to actually do this different work. And so for now, we'll leave all of this stuff printed, and later on we'd have the show info method. We will delete some of the stuff, but this is a little bit of a challenge to get to work, and there might be a better way to do it, but the main idea here is we see the logic of it, and we practice our object-oriented programming principles in this project. Okay, in the next video, we're just going to keep on implementing more and more methods and properties to this class, and we'll see you then. Alright, welcome back, and let's implement the paying tuition part. So we ran our last application. We had their balance of 1800. So what we want to do is, if the student wants to pay, then we need to allow that implementation. So let's go to that method. So they can view their balance. They view their balance should be easy enough to implement. That's going to be public. We can do, we'll do void view balance, and we'll say sysout your balance is, and then concatenate the tuition balance. Okay, and then if they pay tuition, then we're going to say public void. Of course, our method will be pay tuition. Now, if we're going to pay, we're going to expect a number. So we should say this should be a integer payment. Now, let's see. It should be the same type as the tuition balance. So I think we had all integers here. It could have been doubles, but since I did it as integer, we'll leave it as that for now. You can work with doubles and integers differently, but we'll just leave it as the same variable type. Okay, so for paying, then we are going to, let's see here, we want to say tuition balance then equals tuition balance minus the payment. Should be simple enough. And we can say sysout, say thank you for your payment of, and we'll concatenate payment. Now let's say if they pay the balance or pay the tuition, then let's right away call the view balance method, right? Because sometimes that's helpful. We can reuse this view balance in different times throughout the application. So instead of just writing it each time, we'll just have this kind of helper function. Okay, so very good. So then now we'll say stu1 dot pay tuition, pay $500, and let's run this again, and let's see what we get here. So let's do Mary, Sean, third level, history 101, math 101, and Q to quit. Alright, so we break. Okay, so we can fix that, by the way. Enrolled in these 2 courses, tuition balance is $1,200, paid $500, your balance is $700. Okay, very good. Now let's go to, let's fix this, by the way. Let's take out that break statement. So we don't need this break anymore since we fixed that. Now, just like we did with the tuition, instead of asking them or hard coding that, let's ask the user how much the tuition will be for. So instead of receiving the value here, we want to, just like everywhere else, receive input. So we're going to have our scanner equals new scanner system dot in and we'll say integer payment equals to n dot next integer. Oops. Dot next. Let's get that method again. Next int. There we go. Okay, so we'll just ask them just like before, and of course then we need to prompt them and say enter your payment. Here we go. Alright, now run this again. So I like the idea of asking them better. So Jim Williams is a freshman. Here's information. Math 101. They quit. Okay, so there's their balance of 600. Your payment is 500. Very good. Okay. Let's put this not on the same line, so we take that out here. Okay, now in this case we are actually showing the balance. We don't want to show that, so that this is printing from when their enrollment comes. So we might want to show that, but we also probably would want to show that when they're going to pay their tuition, right? So if they're going to pay their tuition, why don't we also call view balance? Because they might want to know what their balance is, right? We only print it there because this is like a debugger right there. So let's, in fact, take out the tuition since we know it works. Run it one more time. John Wilson is a junior enrolling in English 101, and they're going to quit. Okay, so there's what they're enrolled in, and your balance is 600. Enter your payment. We're going to pay 300 or 250. And thanks for your payment 250. Your balance is now 350. Okay, great. So our pay tuition is implemented, and I think we are just about done. We just need to do our show info, as well as we need to actually convert this entire thing now to an array of objects, which is a fun new thing for us. So we'll do that in the next couple of videos. Alright, welcome back, and let's do our show info. So this is one of the more important methods we need to do. So public void show info. And again, some people prefer that this is a return. This returns a string, and then they return this, or they print it. Either one, it really doesn't matter. Just make sure you're consistent. So then we return the name, which is, let's see, we have first name and last name, and then we do /n here, and let's also say courses enrolled, and then of course we'll want to concatenate courses, and then after that I think all we need to know is their balance. So we'll say balance is concatenate tuition balance, and that should do it. So let's go to our main app, and then once we do all this, then we'll say stu1 dot, is it print or show info? Show info. Alright, but because we are returning something, right, we're returning something, and we need to actually then print this. We'll say sysout, and we'll print that to the console. Okay. Alright, so we did a lot there really quickly. All we did was just update our show info. Some people, by the way, also do this as a toString, which is part of the object class, and then we'd actually override that. And let's just do it for this. We did. Let's do this. This is part of the object, or the the parent class of this. And let's see. Okay. And your first name Roger Wilson is a junior, and enrolling in Math 101. Q to quit. Okay, your balance is 600 and your payment 500. Okay, great. Okay, this is looking good. What we want to do is let's just clean everything up and remove all the unnecessary prints, just so we can tell, just so we only display what we're asked to display. So let's go to our main. Let's go up to our top. So what do we not need to see? We don't need to see this info right there. We don't need to see that initial print. What else do we not need to see? We don't need to see what courses they're enrolled in. Yeah, I don't think we need to see that. And that's probably all we need to take out. I think having all the tuition stuff is good. And yeah, so one thing we do want to add is their grade on their toString. So after their name, let's say grade level, and that should be and what is that variable that we have here at the top? Grade year. And we also should print their student ID. So we have the grade level. We have /n student ID is student ID, and so on. Okay. All right, let's create a console and run this again. There we go. So I'll just do myself here. Tim Short is a 4th year. And I'm going to do Math 101, English 101, and then quit. There's my balance. Enter your payment. I'm going to pay nothing right now. And there's the show info. Okay. Very good. Alright, I'm liking how this is looking. Maybe let's put all this, to make this look a little bit better, let's add a little space in between this so it's indented a little bit, just so it looks a little bit better. So where do we enroll in the course? So let's add a space right before we add the course. One more time. Roger Wilson, second year, History 101, English 101, Math 101, quit. Payment of 800. Okay, that looks a little bit better to me. There's our info, blah blah blah, and then the balance. Okay, alright, so there we have implemented our Shinfo, which is basically everything we've done for this database, for this application. What we have left is the exciting part of actually taking this out of individualizing everything and making it more of a real world application setting. So we need to put this into an array. So we don't want to have to create new objects like this all the time, right? And just copy this down and just change the object name. This is very inefficient if you wanted multiple objects, right? And the whole idea of object-oriented programming is that you save yourself from having to do this. So we've gone one step to putting everything inside of a class, but we're going to go one step further and actually have this be reduced drastically. So we'll do that in the next video. Alright, welcome back, and let's finish off our student database application. Okay, so what we don't want to do is have this where we have a preset number of students that we are defining at the very beginning, and one, it's not realistic and it's not maintainable and it's kind of a mess. So what we want is just one. We want to reduce that as much as we can. So the first thing we want to do is go back to our original outline, which is ask the user how many students we want to add. Ask how many new students is what we want. New students. that we want to add. Okay, so how do we do that? Again, we're going to ask them, we're going to just prompt them. We'll say enter number of new students to enroll. Alright, and then we're going to take the scanner and we're going to say n equals new scanner system.in. Alright, now we had this in the student class but not in our main, so we got to bring in this library for this class. Alright, so we're going to ask them how many want to enroll. Now when we do that, we want to create an array of students based on that size. So how do you create an array of objects? So we're going to say student, so an array of students, which we'll call students, equals new students of size. Okay, we need to actually grab this value, so we'll say integer num of students equals n dot next integer. So this is how big we want to create the array. Of course, minus 1 to account for the size of the array. Actually, no, we want to leave that as the actual number. Yeah. So this is how many elements are inside. Of course, arrays start at 0. But when we talk about the size, it's the actual number of elements. Okay, so this is how you create an array of objects based on with a different size. So this then is going to go down here, create n number of students. We'll put it up here. Okay, so based on this, then we want to iterate through this creation of new students. So we're going to say for integer, we'll say n equals 0 as long as n is less than num of students, and then we want to do n plus plus. Okay, so inside here is going to be all the magic of what we did earlier. So actually what we can do is just actually copy this right here and put it right inside. And every time we're going to iterate through, we're going to create a new student, which we'll just call stu. And that student will enroll, it'll pay tuition, and then we'll print. And now we could do this, but this is actually kind of the whole point of doing this. Is then what we want is to put our students inside of an array. So we want to actually retain this information. So we want to say student at n equals new student. Students, I should say, students n equals new student, and there is how we can then access all our methods. So we'll say students, which student, the students at n, and so forth. So all this then can be available outside. So we could even say here, we could move this outside here and then say students at 0 or 1 or 2 or whatever we want to say, and then print that information. We'll just put it inside the for loop there, just to actually, just for the sake of you seeing how this works, we'll say 0, 1, 2, and so on. The fact that we implement it here, you should see how this will work. Okay. Alright, so enter number of students to enroll. We're going to take 2. Let's do Tim Short is a freshman. And we'll do in history 101 and math 101. Quit, balance is 1200, enter payment of 500. Okay, here is our next student name. Right, so that's very good, payment of 500. Enter next student name is Roger. Wilson is a sophomore or a junior, and is just going to take English 101 and is going to quit 600. Okay, array index out of bounds. Okay, so we only had 2 students, so obviously this one is not needed. Okay, now this is all very good. Let's see here. Yeah, this is probably fun. We could enhance this in other ways. I'm gonna put this inside here so we don't have that array index out of bounds issue again, and this way we can see all the information for each student. So you could enhance this later on, like you could do the same thing and iterate through different tuition payments, but I think you get the idea of how this works. Let me run this one more clean time. So we'll say gen number of students, which is right. So number of students is 2. So say Jen. We'll say Jen Lilly is a freshman, is doing Math 101, English 101, quits. Enter payment. We'll do 300. Okay, very good. Put in some information and enter student first name. Do Roger. Williams is a junior, doing Math 101, is going to quit, pays 100. There we go. Okay, very good. So there you go. Now, if we wanted to have this outside the loop that actually corresponded with everything here, what we would do is actually just do this entire thing, which is have the for loop, and then we print everything here at the end. So maybe that's how you might want to enhance this a little bit differently. So at any rate, that's how we can work with arrays of objects. Pretty powerful tool. And now there's nothing, there's no stu1, stu2 that we have to manage, but we can have we can have 100 students that we enter in this way, and it's all maintained within our data structure of an array. So pretty powerful. And again, I hope to do another course over data structures and algorithms to cover those kinds of ideas. But for now, we kind of see this, again, additional practice of object-oriented programming, and we see the power of arrays to create multiple objects and number of objects. So that's a really powerful tool when we talk about object-oriented programming. In the next video, we're going to do it where we actually read a file, and we don't know how many objects. So in this case, we actually had to we had to know how many students we were going to add, and that way we created an array of that size. So what happens if we don't know how many students we're going to add, but we want to keep on adding as long as we want? So that's what we'll get into another data structure. So anyway, hope you are enjoying practicing building these applications, and we'll see you in the next project.